Okay, now the next two capital budgeting techniques we're going to calculate here. Now we're going to calculate the profitability index and we're going to calculate the payback on this project. And let's remember now, this is a project which we're thinking about investing in. And what we know so far is that we think the cost of the investment is going to be $100,000 today. The cash flow per year is going to be $22,251 every year for 10 years. Our minimum acceptable return on the investment, our weighted average cost of capital, is 8%. And what we calculated in the previous video was the net present value and the internal rate of return. We had a positive net present value and we had a rate of return that was greater than our cost of capital. Now to calculate the profitability index, it's the present value of the inflows divided by the present value of the outflows. Now the inflows of this project, the cash inflows, $22,251 a year. To find the present value of that, we multiply it by our PVIFA with N equal to 10 and I equal to 8%. That gives us $149,306.44. That's the present value of the inflows. We subtract that, not subtract, but rather divide that by the present value of the outflows, the initial cost of the investment, which we know to be $100,000. So if you take the present value of the inflows, divide by the present value of the outflows, you get a profitability index for this project of 1.4931. Profitability index technique says that if that number is greater than 1, you would accept the project. Indeed, it's greater than 1, we would accept the project. And again, it's telling us the same thing that net present value did. That is, it has a positive net present value. So we would accept the project based on profitability index. The payback technique is defined as the cost of the investment, the initial investment, divided by the cash flow per year. This project costs us $100,000 today. From that investment, we're going to get cash inflows each year of $22,251. If you take the initial investment, divide by the cash flow per year, in this case we get 4.49 years, roughly 4.5 years. Now, how do you make a decision with payback? Well, if you're willing to wait 4.5 years to get your money back, then indeed this would be a project you'd be willing to accept. One of the problems with payback, if you said a payback that was too short in this time, that is, you said, no, I'm only willing to wait 4 years to get my money back, you'd reject this project, even though it has a positive net present value and a rate of return greater than the cost of capital. Clearly, payback can give us bad decisions at some point. And as you could imagine, you might run up on a project that would actually give you the proper payback you're looking for, but might have a negative net present value and a rate of return less than the cost of capital. Again, payback's a little problematic, but again, almost everybody's heard of the payback technique. If you don't put it in your project, in your project report rather, somebody's going to ask you about it. So instead of waiting to be asked, just go ahead and calculate it, put it in your report, but don't really use it for anything in particular. The next video that we look at now, we're going to talk about why it is we calculate a modified internal rate of return. And you're going to find out that that's indeed due to the reinvestment rate assumption of internal rate of return. This project now has an 18% internal rate of return. That sounds good, but can we actually realize an 18% rate of return? Could we reinvest all our cash flows to earn 18% every year for 10 years? We really can't do that. Modified internal rate of return gives us an option to define a reasonable reinvestment rate and indeed use a rate of return sort of technique to convey information about the project. In the next video, the modified internal rate of return.